Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the June 2023 Logan Municipal Council meeting. Thanks all of you for being here. Tonight, for our opening ceremony, I'm pleased to welcome Mel Payne, who is the president of the board for the Logan Pride Foundation. Thanks for being here, Mel.
Hello, and thank you for inviting Logan Pride here today. My name is Mel Payne, and I am the board chair of the Logan Pride Foundation, as well as the treasurer of Project Rainbow Utah. Happy Pride Month, everybody, and welcome to June. I can't even believe that this year has gone so fast. June is a time we celebrate Pride Month around the United States. Many cities and towns bring people together with parades, festivals, concerts, and events. It is a time for many to shine in who they are and step out of the shadows that society oftentimes pushes them into. Though we look at Pride and Pride festivals today as lighthearted and celebratory, Pride celebrations are actually the anniversary of the Stonewall Riots. The Stonewall Riots in New York City were a necessary means to achieve equal justice and equal opportunity for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning Americans at the time. Pride, as we know it today, is built off of that same foundation and a reminder that LGBTQIA+ Americans still can and must fight for their rights as equal citizens every day, now more than ever with the political climate across the U.S. While Pride is most celebrated in the month of June, it is important that Pride is alive 365 days a year to support those in the community. In Logan, we are lucky enough to have a space for people who identify in the LGBTQIA+ community. St. John's Episcopal Church is a great community partner who makes that possible for the Logan Pride Foundation by providing a physical space for education, support, and community growth. LPF was founded in 2016 by the late Krista Sorensen and holds space for those seeking common ground through support and social groups 7 days a week in our Pride House. Last year, we saw so much growth that the Logan Pride Foundation has started to be recognized statewide and has been featured on Salt Lake City television news outlets, and most recently in Slug Mag, Salt Lake's premier event magazine. Though it wasn't the first Pride Festival in Logan, which was actually organized by a local citizen who met his husband at Utah State University, the Logan Pride Foundation threw its first official Logan Pride Festival in 2017. The Pride Festival has grown from a single row of vendors and about 100 attendees in its inaugural year to roughly 80 vendors, 10 large fiscal sponsors, 13 local musicians, 7 food trucks, and over 3,000 attendees last year. This year, Logan and the Logan Pride Foundation celebrate 7 years of Pride with our motto, Let Love Grow, on September 9th at Willow Park. This year's celebration is shaping up to be the largest in Logan's history and will feature fundraising events leading up to and after the festival as we all let our love grow. In towns and cities across America that are outside of the metro areas, much like our community here in Logan, it is now more important than ever to stand with and for those that identify in the LGBTQ+ community and let love grow by showing support and love and understanding. Showing up and supporting is life-changing and life-saving for many in our community. So I would like to invite each and every one of you, regardless of how you identify, to stand up, show up, and join us at our festival on September 9th. Enjoy the live music, great local food trucks and vendors, but most of all, let your love grow. Thank you for your time tonight. Happy Pride, and we'll see you in September. Now if you'll all stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mel, before you step away, can you just let people know exactly where the Pride office, Logan Pride is, and what your hours are?
Yeah, absolutely. The Logan Pride House is located at 69 East, 100 North, so we're just right beside St. John's Episcopal Church and right across from the park there. Our hours are normally evening hours, so from 4 to 8 p.m. we normally have groups 7 days a week, and on Sundays we have open hours throughout the day.
And is there a website or someplace?
You can visit us at loganpride.org, and we're also on all the social media channels, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Discord at Logan Pride UT. Thank you all so much for having us.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here to recognize Pride Month.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time on our agenda, I will entertain a motion for acceptance of the minutes and approval of tonight's agenda.
It's just you two.
Well, I guess I will move then to accept the agenda and the minutes.
And I will second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So just a reminder that the Logan City Council typically meets on the first and third Tuesdays of the month at 5:30. Because next Tuesday, or this first Tuesday in July is 4th of July, that meeting has been canceled. So we will be holding our only meeting in July on July 18th. I also would like to say both Mark Anderson and Ernesto Lopez are excused for tonight's meeting. So, at this point in time, it's now time for questions and comments for the mayor and the council. Anyone wishing to come up and comment on any item that is not otherwise on our agenda may come and address the council at this point. Just step up to the microphone, give your name and where you live, and you will have 3 minutes. Just a reminder, we are in election season, so if you are a candidate, you are certainly welcome to come up and address a comment or a question to the council, but just a reminder that during council meetings, you're here as a citizen, not as a candidate. So if anyone would like to come forward, please go ahead. Okay, seeing nobody, I will move it back to the mayor and staff reports.
All right. First of all, we have some board appointments, several of them. The Parks and Rec Advisory Board, we have a new appointment, Allison Ward. You should have seen her bio and information. She is the chair of the Cash Trails Alliance, and I am recommending her to serve on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. I think we could probably do all 3 of these together.
Yeah.
Okay. And then for the Bridger Neighborhood Council, we have a new appointment. We're really tickled. We haven't had a chair for the Bridger neighborhood for quite a while. And Kylie Hollenbach has offered to do that. I visited with her and looking forward to her taking over that leadership role. And then on the Golf Course Advisory Board, we have a reappointment, Lee Stamsel. So I would submit those 3 names to the council for ratification.
I will move ratification. I've read the resumes, or either know some of them. So I would move that these are great candidates and that they be approved.
Or any of the candidates, I know here,
Allison's in Bend.
Allison's not.
She's in Bend, Oregon today.
Oh, okay. Oh, in Bend, Oregon. All right, and I know Kylie, she may be watching online. Lee, terrific. If folks are here, I'd like to recognize them, but certainly it's not required that they attend, so.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor of these appointments, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thanks, Mayor Daines, for bringing those to us. Any other business
Nope,
on
that's
there?
everything.
Just your budget that we get to talk about later?
Exactly, that will take a while, so
Okay.
we'll make the rest short.
Sounds good. Council business, Jeannie, you have a report on Planning Commission for us?
Yeah, Planning Commission last meeting discussed a short-term rental in the Lundstrom neighborhood that was, there were quite a few neighbors there that opposed the short-term rental. They were not very pleased. They felt like we had not given them enough information with respect to short-term rentals, and they weren't aware that they were allowed most everywhere. So they felt like they had not had that information from anyone, and so that was one thing that was pretty important, I thought, for us to understand. The old Ephraim Apartments, which are on 4th North between 6th and 7th East, were approved with 1 parking stall reduction. There was a great deal of discussion. The proponent has several properties in that area, and one of those properties had been permitted already to be a treatment center, and he said if he filled it, he would require so many parking spaces. He said it was not going to be that big, so he agreed to reduce the maximum number of patients, clients, that he will have in the facility, thereby reducing his parking enough that he had enough parking with some off-site parking to accommodate the apartment complex that he wants to build on the site. So there will be 102 total parking stalls on the property, not just because of that building.
And that's right on 4th, so there's no street parking.
No street parking. His alternative parking is about a half a block away. Well, no, it's a full block away across 6th East on the same side of the street. He's building a parking lot behind another rental. Then he also brought forward the Spring Hollow Apartments, which are at 651 East, 600 North, and he will have 5 townhome units with 6 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms for a total of 30 bedrooms. And he had enough adequate parking for that, and so that was also approved. And last but not least, there was a down zone that we will, I believe, be talking about later.
We're workshopping that too.
And so that was the extent of the planning commission.
Thanks, Jeannie. Okay, we will now move on to our action items for this evening. Let me count up how many public hearings do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I looked at this earlier. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 public hearings tonight. The first one, Russ Holly, would you like to come up and walk us through this prior to opening it to public hearing? This is ordinance 23-18. It's a code amendment for the district and quarter zone uses related to waste-related uses.
Yes, the amendment is to change waste-related uses in the commercial service and industrial park zone from conditionally permitted to not permitted. So the only place in the city where you could have waste-related services would be the public zone. Any questions on this one?
Can you give a brief description of what waste-related uses means?
So it would be like transfer stations, things of that nature where trucks came in and dumped it and then moved it to another area.
Or truck storage?
Sorry?
Truck storage, like?
It could also be, truck storage or any sort of related storage to the waste company or the waste facility.
Russ, does that mean that the land needs to be owned by the government?
Typically, if it's zoned public, it is owned by some public entity. It doesn't necessarily have to be a government entity, but it's some sort of public entity.
Or a nonprofit. We just revised.
Yeah, or a
To be a
nonprofit. And so it could be possible to establish a new waste-related system or facility in the future through a rezone process. But this code amendment just says it shouldn't be on private property in the industrial or commercial service zones.
So if it's in the public zone, would it then be a conditional use or a permitted use?
I think it's conditional in public.
Okay, that satisfies me. That's good.
Okay, any other questions for Russ?
Not from me.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so if anyone would like to come and speak to ordinance 23-18, please come to the mic, identify yourself, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing no dash for the mic, I will bring it back to the council for action.
I move we approve ordinance 23-18.
I'll second.
Any other questions or comments? Discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor of ordinance 23-18 indicate aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, ordinance 23-18 passes. Russ is back again for our next public hearing, which is rezone. It's ordinance 23-19. It is a request to rezone a .22 acre lot from mixed residential low to community commercial to house a daycare center, 1362 North 400 West.
Yes, so if you remember, the Children's Justice Center used to be located at this address. It's a fully developed property. They moved into the Adams neighborhood a couple years ago. I can't remember the exact date. And they fully vacated this property now, and Little Wonders Daycare, which is the property that basically surrounds it, is interested in purchasing the property and expanding their commercial daycare. And the current zone is residential. As you can see here, it's MR12. And commercial level daycares are not allowed in that residential zone. They're capped at 16 maximum kids. And they would like to house about 30 to 35, I believe, in this. And so their request is to rezone that to the community commercial, which is the blue color here, to match the zoning of their main building and their main campus there. Any questions on this one?
No.
Okay, this is a public hearing. If anyone present would like to come and speak to ordinance 23-19, please come to the microphone, identify yourself, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. I will bring it back to the council for action. Before we do that, though, one quick question. Was there any community communication, any emails or anything that came to planning on this?
No public comments on this one.
Okay.
Nope.
I'll move approval of ordinance 2319.
And I will second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of ordinance 23-19 indicate aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, ordinance 23-19 is approved. Thanks, Russ. We'll see you in a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, we will now move to a public hearing on resolution 23-23. This is a consideration of a proposed resolution establishing a property line adjustment fee schedule. We workshopped this pretty extensively at our last meeting. So I don't know, Darren, if you have any information you'd like to share with us or with the room before we open that to the public hearing?
The only additional information, I provided the summary of how we calculated the fees. That was provided to council for the review. Otherwise, it remains the same. Open to any questions.
Any questions from either of you for Darren on this?
Thank you for doing that analysis.
Absolutely.
Would you mind, can you put the schedule up there just in case someone comes up to speak to it and that people can see that? I would appreciate it. Thanks, Darren. All right. This is a public hearing. Anyone who would like to come and speak to resolution 23-23, please come forward to the podium, the microphone, and state your name and 3 minutes. Seeing nobody, I will bring it back to the council for action.
I will move we approve resolution 23-23.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of resolution 23-23, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, resolution 23-23 passes. Our next public hearing is on resolution 23-19, which is the Transportation Master Plan. We workshopped this 2 weeks ago quite extensively, and I know we have received some public comment on it. Darren, you want to just give us a quick overview, and then we'll open it up to the public hearing.
Yeah, so we'll just do a quick overview. We have been working on this master plan for a couple of years now, and with my predecessor, Bill Young, we've involved quite a few stakeholders in the process. The purpose is just to come up with a plan that is able to involve all modes of transportation, but to create a safe and travel environment that allows for both vehicles and pedestrians and bicycles and all of the modes of transportation to transport themselves in a safe manner, as safe as possible. We do that through a couple different processes by having different types of roadways, that's our classification of roadways, and by having different levels of service and identifying our target level of service, which is a D. I've provided a list of comments that were made to the council, as well as one that was made to the Planning Commission. Through that process, we addressed those comments, at least to what we feel address the comments, and we'd like to leave that up to you to decide whether we address them sufficiently or not.
Okay.
And I guess with that, unless there's more information you'd like to bring forth or to talk about, I'll leave it up to the council to have that discussion.
Any conversation prior to opening the public hearing?
Well, I do know that we got an extensive email just before this meeting with some questions and concerns. So let's have the public hearing and then we can talk about it.
I had a extensive conversation with Darren this afternoon and answered a number of my questions, but I'll make two of them now. The 400 north from 1st West to 6th West is designated in the plan as a future, Collector Street, I think?
Yes,
Or, it's not an arterial.
you're correct.
It's an it's
A
a
collector street.
That neighborhood has been under threat for quite a number of years with engineering studies. The neighbors in there are aware of this, and they're very, very concerned because we have a road that is an arterial and 2nd North, and we have Ellis School there. So I think we need to be very careful that we don't dissect this neighborhood any further. And I've made pledges to them that I would try to defend them. I think we need to find other ways than to cut another arterial through a good neighborhood. So that's one thing, and I think that needs to go on record. The other comment came up not too long ago, but the roundabout on 5th North and 2nd East. I love roundabouts and lived with them as I've traveled and lived in foreign countries. That roundabout doesn't work very well. It backs up. And I don't know the engineering behind it. I think there's an overload on the north-south and not so much on the east. You know what I'm saying? It's not balanced. Mm-hmm. So I guess what I'm saying is that for future roundabouts, we probably ought to take it into greater study to see if it's going to work as it's intended and not, it might have been worked better as a coordinated light with the light on 2nd East and 4th North. Mm-hmm. So just for your information.
Thank you.
Other than that, I would commend you on the depth of this study and something good to be referenced. I've read not all of it, would have put me to sleep, but
I appreciate your honesty.
it
That's
wasn't.
right, that's exactly what I was thinking.
138-page report.
It was exciting until I dozed off.
Understood.
Thanks for your honesty. All right. This is a public hearing, so if anyone would like to come and speak to Resolution 23-19, please come to the podium, state your name and where you live, and please keep your remarks to 3 minutes. Tom is going to be timing, so if you hear a duck go off, I think, then you know that your time is up.
Dr. Gail Yost. I live on First East, and I'm part of the Neighborhood Council, Neighborhood Steering Committee. I have two questions. One is about First East. We are getting inundated, and yet we have another, just 1 block north of where I live, we have another building being finished that has 100 and something apartments in it. And how are we going to, is this going to be really approved I mean, the problem is, I see your landscape thing saying approved, or it's okay, but it's unacceptable, or it's acceptable. But I don't see how we can handle any more traffic than what we already have. We only have one lane each way, other than at the traffic light, at Third South. And it gets backed up to where we can almost not get out of our driveway almost every time that we need to leave. And this is not just the peak times. And I understand that the acceptable or unacceptable is at peak times. Is that correct? It's about peak
Yes,
times.
yes, it's about peak times, whether that's in the morning or in the evening.
Yes.
Yep.
We're having a hard time even at lunchtime. Even at 3 o'clock, I can find it backed up almost all the way down the block when there's a red light. And and then we can't park on our own side of the street. We're on the west side of the street. If we have an extra need for parking, like we did the last 2 days where we had some landscaping being done, so we couldn't even park in our driveway at the time, we would have to walk across the street if we could find a nearby parking space. And that gets a little dangerous. So I don't see how that can be acceptable, to tell you the truth. The second question is something a little bit more involved in the neighborhood. Do we have any places in the Wilson neighborhood which are designated as eventually housing that is going to be taken down in order to put in roadway? I could not get through the whole 100-plus lengthy transportation update. It's a little bit hard on eyes to read. And do we expect that they're going to be looking at taking houses down to get more roadways in?
On 100 East?
On 200 East is what I understand we have the biggest problem with. And yet we have some apartments that kind of in the middle between 100 and 200 East.
We don't have any plans at this time to take down houses.
Because I understood that the CMPO were looking at taking a few houses down.
There's been lots of studies in regards to the UDOT study of Main Street, and that may have been a suggestion at one time. I've not heard of that, but.
Okay,
Okay, Gail, I'm sorry, but your time for 3 minutes is up.
thank you.
Thanks. And Darren, why don't we save your answers for, as people come up, if you want to just note their questions, and then at one point in time, you can just answer all of those. I think that will allow people the full use of their time to ask the questions. Is that,
Yeah.
you comfortable with that? Okay, great, thanks. All right, anyone else would like to come and speak?
Hi, I'm Camilla Schultz. I live at 1416 West, 1900 South in Logan. I apologize for the very late email, as I only just learned over the weekend that you were, or just before the weekend, that you were going to be presenting this today. So I tried to take some time to put something together for you. I have some concerns about this master plan. I want to first say how much I respect the engineers at the city, having worked alongside with them for several years. I know the hard work that went into this plan. I worked with the engineers that they hired to put this plan together. I respect them. I think they have done a good job doing what they know how to do. That being said, I was disappointed in the plan. I found it to be a very auto-centric plan, not truly a comprehensive master plan. Transportation isn't just about moving cars from place to place. This was an idea that was developed by the auto industry, sold to the American public, and has been perpetuated for decades. under the guise of solving congestion, even though they knew at the time and have continued to know that it doesn't work. Expanding roadways doesn't solve congestion. It hasn't ever. I don't believe it ever will. That being said, I think that our transportation master plan should reflect all users. Users that don't have the privilege of owning a vehicle, whether that's because of financial reasons, disabilities, choices they make in their life. It doesn't matter. I think they should be able to get from place to place safely, efficiently, and to do that without having to balance whether it is a life and death situation for them. I use all modes of transportation personally. I ride my bike to work over 7 miles. I drove here today. I use the bus. I'm very personally familiar with lots of modes of transportation. I don't think there's any one right way. I think there are many ways that work together to create the best system that we can make. My goal here tonight is to ask you to pause. I don't see any urgency in adopting this plan, but I think there's a lot of reason to take our time and make sure that what we are doing is the right thing for Logan City. And I wanted to help you to be able to be informed. There is a lot of technical jargon in this that most people are not familiar with. They're not familiar with the implications of them. And I wanted to give you some resources to be able to come up to speed on those. So in that email I sent you, I included a spreadsheet with articles, YouTube videos, some studies. I do have a lot more. This was a small sample of information, and I'm happy to discuss any of those with you. If you can share it with city staff. I mean, these are all resources that are available publicly. But I wanted you to be able to have an informed decision, really understand the discussion that is happening in the transportation industry right now, and be able to understand how things are changing, why things are the way they are, why the methods that are used, what the modeling is really telling you, things like that. So again, my goal here is to say I believe this needs to be more comprehensive. I think we need to take some time, and I wanted you to have the best opportunity to make a really truly informed decision, because I think you guys are the ones that need to set those parameters. You need to tell us as an industry, I'm an engineer as well, what you want your street to look like. They can build it however you want it to be. But I think you are the right people to make those decisions, not one industry or another. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Appreciate it. The podium is open. Anybody else like to come and speak to this?
Oh, certainly.
No. Committee, no.
Oh, no, before you start, just remind you, if you did speak, please make sure you sign in on the sheet outside of the front of council chambers. Thanks.
My name's Alice McAllister. I live on the island. I wanted to thank the last speaker for her well-thought, much more pleasantly presented arguments than I could make. I have so much less patience. I have just a few short comments. Is that Mr. Farrar indicated that there were some public comments that were made since the last council meeting, and I wondered if those could be made public to us this evening.
They were emails written to the council members, so I don't know what's the...
You can summarize them, you can read them in their entirety, or whatever you'd like.
Okay, if we could all know what was made in those comments, I think that would be great. There is a sentence in the master plan that reads, the modeling indicates that as more users choose to walk, bike, bus, or other modes of transportation, the existing roadways will be able to maintain acceptable levels of service in their existing condition. can we find out how this determination is made? It's clear that there have been vehicular accidents and with pedestrians or people using other modes of transportation other than automobiles have been injured or killed, and this has happened within the last year. And I question the actual validity of this statement within the master plan. I would like to agree with the prior speaker, again, that the plan is auto-centric. I would also like to say it's backward thinking, thinking that in the year 2050, which I think the plan references a couple times, that the primary mode of transportation will be the personal automobile is ludicrous. Our environment, our economy won't be able to sustain that. And Logan is looking backwards if we continue to plan as that being the mode of transportation that everyone can and should use. There's additionally, within the master plan, there is no statement of encouragement for residents to use alternative transportation. The assumption seems to be made that those who choose to use the buses are doing so because of economic reasons, not because they would choose to. And there's no discussion about the city encouraging residents to consider that as a viable alternative. I would like to encourage that to be changed.
Thank you, Alex. Any other comments? You sit in the front row, it makes it easier to hop up.
I'm Catherine Philpott. I live on the island as well. Yes, this plan is very auto-centric. It also seems as though Logan City itself really would like to perpetuate the idea of growth and downtown growth specifically. So the apartments going on 100 East they're not making it more bike friendly in that area. 100 East used to have the best bike lane in the city and it's been ruined. It is horrible to drive down on your bike. The construction doesn't meet, the repairments to the construction doesn't meet what it was previous, which is a huge concern going forward for any construction projects. What is their liability and what is their expectation to repair what they dug up and make it as much as what it was before? You guys are rezoning and allowing buildings to go up without adequate parking. And as much as we all would like to hope that people aren't going to drive in this nice mountain town, they do. We centralize our ideas upon growth, and that includes family growth. And can you imagine bicycles taking place of cars while hauling around 6 or 7 kids all on a bicycle? Like, that's not going to happen. People are going to drive. We found that out in Summerfest. That's why we moved it to the fairgrounds, because everyone drove. They crowded up downtown. It was horrible. It was a nightmare. You couldn't walk, you couldn't bike anywhere at these events. I would like to see going forward that you do put a hold on this plan and that more thought is put forth on other modes of transportation. There's a paragraph about biking in there. We need to concentrate on getting more bike lanes available so it's not dangerous. Because right now, if you're lessening the requirement for parking spots, people are going to park on the road. They don't care. What that means for cyclists is they're darting in and out of parked cars into traffic. That's horrible. It's so dangerous, and I cannot stress that enough. So maybe if you're looking at growth and you're looking at limiting parking spaces to encourage walking, to encourage bus system, and to encourage biking, we might want to think about first building bike lanes that are safe, and that will allow that in more areas downtown and out of downtown. And then maybe we can look at limiting parking spaces and where we can do that and what kind of growth we're looking at. I would really like to see 100 East cleaned up, that bike lane. It's a good, as you put it, arterial lane. So if we're looking at 300 South issues and we want that congestion to ease up, we've got to get cyclists on the road and we have to make it safe for them. Thanks.
Thanks, Kat. Any other comments?
Wasn't planning on commenting. My name is Brett Nelson. I have been in a lot of meetings around transportation here with CMPO and with Darren and Paul. I sympathize with the difficulty of the situation. I just want to put that out there. It's the situation as a developer here is that on the one hand, we have people saying, let's see what the development pressure is, and then we'll figure out the roads that can accommodate it. And the developers are saying, tell me what the roads are going to look like so I know what to build, right? The latter is much easier to develop, a more cohesive plan. The former obviously doesn't have people throwing darts and hoping that they land in the right spot. And so I can really sympathize. A couple things that I hope everyone can consider, and I just had a question. The point that Mr. Jensen brought up on the arterials going through the residential neighborhoods, we're at a point in Logan where arterials are going to have to go through sensitive areas like neighborhoods, unfortunately, just because we're getting bigger. I was wondering if we could have some discussion now or in the future around what options do we have on those arterials to kind of confine them to themselves and lessen their impact on the immediate neighborhoods as we see some of these areas getting built out or already existing. Another thing that I would point out from a development standpoint is that the grid system works very well from a transportation perspective, and I realize that, and so I'm not arguing against it. Within the major grid system, I would point out that every study that I've read recently on how to develop for residential says that people actually don't want to live on a grid. They want to drive on the grid, but their homes, they don't want them to be on a grid. People actually prefer winding and circular streets to live with their homes on. And so maybe if we can consider that, where I look at this map up, and it's an overall efficiently planned grid system for major transportation. And then as we narrow down into that, can we have a little bit of a focus on saying, what's the latitude around not building out gridded homes so that people get more of a neighborhood feel in these areas that are probably in the future going to be somewhat higher density, NR6, for example, stuff like that, where they're going a little bit side by side. That's just a couple comments, but I commend, I did peruse the plan previously and somewhat more recently, and I commend the efforts of, you guys have actually put a lot of thought into this, and you've done a great job. Thank you.
Thanks, Brett. Any other comments before we bring it back to the council? Okay, seeing none, I will bring it back to the council for action. And then Darren, any answers to the questions that were raised by any of our speakers that you'd like to address?
A lot of some of the sentiment is that we're creating larger roads to allow for growth. The idea that we've put in terms of pushing this plan together, putting the plan together is to create safer roads, identifying what our level of service is that's desirable, and creating roads that will allow us to reach that level of service. That creates a roadway system that's safer for pedestrians and bicycles. If we don't improve the roads, they get really congested, and it leaves no room for folks to cross the road traffic. And so that's the premise behind our idea. We make references to bicycle and pedestrian plans, but we have a separate bicycle and pedestrian master plan, and we didn't want to take over that plan. So although we made references to wherever that plan coincides with our plan, or this plan, I guess, we've made those references to say we need to put in this infrastructure according to that bicycle and pedestrian master plan. So I feel like we've satisfactorily addressed the questions. I think this plan actually achieves what everyone wants, which is a safer community to transport themselves in. But that's, in a nutshell, it kind of just goes back to a lot of the things we talked about in the last discussion.
Okay. Thanks. All right. Just trying to pull it up. The emails we received. Camilla's is pretty long and comprehensive, so I think her comments that she may kind of wrap that one up. Do you have access to yours? Do you want to look at one of them?
I don't remember getting any except Camilla's.
Maybe people don't like to write to you, Jamie.
It could be.
Just teasing.
Did you get more?
Pull them up. I know I forwarded them to Darren. Let's see what they are. Sorry, I get way too many emails at different places at different times, so.
You could look in your sent email to
I just
Darren.
got some. So we got one from Sue Sorensen.
That's true.
She thanked us.
I didn't see that one.
Sue's concerns are mostly on 400 North
Yeah,
That's what I
and 6
addressed.
West. Yep.
Yeah.
yeah. That was her bigger issue, was just, and also the notification of neighborhoods
And
when projects begin.
I would like to say, I know Russ is filling in for the entire community development department tonight, but would you put the word out that the bike lane is all messed up wherever you went?
Yeah, I have that in my notes that I'll talk to.
The bike lane
I'll
on
talk to
100
streets and
East.
see if that needs to be addressed.
Yeah,
I'll look at that.
because that bike lane is on the west side, which is why there's no parking on that west side, but that also is where all the construction has happened. So,
Yeah. So,
on both sides of the road.
well, it is on both sides, you're right.
right.
But
But the parking is disallowed on the west side of the road because of the
It's like
bike
the
lane.
luxury bike lane in town. It's like,
Yeah. I know there's been issues at a couple of construction sites that we've,
We will take a look
Yeah.
at that on the
So I know, so Sue's, I'll just read her conclusion, which was she wanted to see a paragraph in the plan of how and when neighborhoods are to be notified of upcoming transportation plans for their area and how to give input, since that there's reevaluation. She wanted to have a grading system of the impact on neighborhoods as high, medium, or low on projects before a plan is approved, and a written statement in the plan that encourages the planning team to look for additional ways to move people besides roads, looking at continuing the grid, so all roads take part of the load. That's kind of the conclusion of her letter. Let's see, what else? Then we got a message about new roads. This is from Tanner Mears.
Is this the public reading of the?
Yeah, these are the comments, yeah, that you had requested.
Speak to the room, please.
So that's what I'm trying to do.
Thank you.
So in this email, his major points were really about the fact that it primarily is auto-centric, with questions about people who can't drive, can't afford to drive, or choose not to drive, and trying to identify and integrate different modes of transportation. That was the gist of this other letter that we received.
Right, but that was not directed to the master plan, was it?
Yes, it was, to the transportation master plan.
Okay.
And I'm not finding my other one. It could have been sent to my other email address. Sometimes people email me on my personal email address, so those are the ones I have at hand. All right. Questions, comments? Tom, Jeannie?
Well, I personally would like to spend a little more time digesting what was sent to us today and looking at some of that. I do have some of the same concerns that we have not really integrated. It's a transportation master plan, it's not a car master plan. And so I think that I think that there is room for us to integrate further different modes of transportation into the plan. And but foremost, I would like Mark and Ernesto to be part of this discussion. And they have not been here for either the workshop or this meeting. So it would be my thought that maybe we should continue it till the July meeting so that they have a chance to participate as well.
Okay. Tom, your thoughts?
Well, I agree with Jeannie. That's a good comment. I would, first of all, appreciate the comments that were made. The thought that comes to my mind is we're in a quandary. You know, we have pressures to move the traffic. We have backups on Main Street. We have backups in other places, and so there's all this pressure. And yet we also have neighborhoods that are saying, please hold off. And another community that says, make room for the bicycles. And let's use there's a lot of pressures out there. And so with compliments to Darren and his team for the plan, I have no problem with a pause. The question is how long, 2 weeks is not enough. 10 years is too long, there's a lot of pressures on this thing. So I wouldn't have a problem with a pause, certainly for Mark and Ernesto. With regard to, I think what Mr. Nelson said, the concept of having straight arterials and on a grid and then having inhibiting streets in the block. That's called a super block. That's used in Phoenix. That's used in Meridian, Idaho. It works pretty well, but we kind of have to tear down the city and, it would have to start over. We have natural barriers, the bluff, the river, etc. With that in mind, maybe there's some thought that could go into, focusing on some arterials and trying to save some neighborhoods. That's a grand phrase. I don't know how you do it. But maybe we can do that, and I'd certainly be open to it. I know that I don't agree that we won't have cars. I mean, some people are saying, no, we're all going to ride bikes or buses. What I have done in my business, I just can't do that. I have to get places, I have to do things, and there's a lot of people that are in business or in delivery where they have to move. And you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of quandary.
Well, and it's a sturdy bike rider who made it all winter on our streets. I said it is a sturdy bike rider that made it all winter.
Yeah.
Because it's hard in the winter. It's extremely difficult.
And there are communities in the world, Europe has focused on this a lot, where you have a ring around the downtown area and then you walk in the downtown area, but it's only 1 or 2 blocks radius. You know what I'm saying? You can walk the 2 blocks, but that starts with a whole new plan. It's really hard to do that unless we...
Especially with 8991 running down the middle of downtown.
Yeah, which we don't own. So I'd agree with the pause. It certainly can be longer than July. The question is how far and what will we accomplish in doing this? I mean, there's certain comments that say, stop, don't do, we don't want to do anything. Well, we can't do that. We're damming a river that is going to overflow. And as our valley continues to attract people, they go through Logan. They go through Logan, and and we all want to have less congestion. See, that's another environmental thing. It'd be nice to ride the bikes, but people aren't, to that degree that we'd like to do it. And so the more we congest, the greater the air pollution is a problem. So there's competing issues here.
But I also think, Tom, you said something very important, and that is that in Europe, there's a concentrated area.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a great deal of desire on the part of people who live in the older parts of Logan, be they west of Maine or east of Maine, that want to keep that community feel in their neighborhoods, and they feel that, and understandably, that expanding the streets to accommodate more traffic is extremely detrimental to that desire. And so I agree entirely with Sue's comment that one thing we could do is talk about the impact on neighborhoods before we make decisions on street planning.
Yeah.
And I also agree with you that we have a built environment. And it's very difficult to say, well, we need cul-de-sacs because that is redevelopment and we're not there yet.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from the two of you is a pause, but I think prior to doing and figuring out how much time, what do we want to accomplish with that pause? And I think that's the ultimate question.
At least get it to the July meeting, and we can have Mark and Ernesto part of that discussion. And if we need to continue it again for a greater 30,000 foot look at this thing.
July could be a long meeting already, just because we only have one meeting in July, but
Yeah, I'm just saying at least.
Well, and I do know that BPAC, the Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee, only really saw this last week, and I know at their meeting there were lots of questions that were raised from them, so I think a pause would allow them a little bit of time to look at this. You know, it is part of the issue, I think, though, too, is that we're looking at the bike and pedestrian plan for Logan, which is from 2015. So we're looking at an 8-year-old plan that you're integrating into this plan, which is brand new. And so that to me, maybe requires a little bit of a pause just to make sure that where that plan intersects, that there haven't been some major changes that need to happen to ensure that this transportation master plan best serves those alternative forms of transportation. Because 8 years, a lot has happened in 8 years.
Yeah.
Not only environmentally, but in our own community.
And CVTD is working on a long-range plan as well.
And they were included in this plan as well.
But they're in the process of working on that long-range plan. So you've got them with an old plan that's being revised and this new plan, and then you've got Bike Ped, which is an old plan that hasn't been revised.
So I'm hearing from Mayor Daines the suggestion that the July 19th meeting might not be the best one to postpone this to.
Maybe August.
Or it would be actually the 18th.
Just a suggestion.
August 1st would be the next meeting after, would be 2 meetings from now.
I don't have any trouble with that. Darren, is there some pressure that this has to be passed in the next fortnight?
No, I a couple of follow-up questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
The plan is a tool we use, especially if you look at the new area, the annexation limit area where we see all the dash lines. We may not have anything planned in that area right now. We don't know, so it wouldn't be dashed. So just to keep that in mind as we go forward, we don't have that tool available to us. So if a development were to come in that area, we would not be able to have them put in those improvements associated with this plan. We just keep that in mind as we go forward. Not to say that it's imminent that we have to do this right now, but
that's a good point.
We don't have any annexation plans, any annexations on the books right at the moment, I don't believe.
Sure.
That are coming on.
We have a lot of pressure out there. No, we don't.
I don't.
If it was on the books, then it wouldn't be able to follow this plan anyways, because they would have already.
Yeah. But I believe that if it's pending, it can be applied. Does that work, Russ? I would ask, is that correct? Because it works with planning.
And the plan is also an advisory document. It's non-binding. So it's something to direct the future, but it is not binding. So you could still look to it.
Okay. My preference would be either the July meeting or the second August meeting.
Are you not going to be here on August 1st?
Probably not.
Well, and you could do it in July too, you know, maybe.
I just really believe that Ernesto and Mark need to be part of this conversation so that we get the best possible outcome.
I have a few notes of what we talked about, what you're looking to have us dive into a little bit further. I guess I just request if there's additional items that you would like us to look at, maybe an email, or if you somehow communicate those to us. And we'll
Absolutely. We'll be happy to. I just really think, you know, I know Mark and Ernesto have not seen any presentation on it or anything. So
Maybe we can recommend that since you can have 2 council members in the meeting, perhaps a meeting with you when they return to town would be helpful for them to get caught up.
Or they can, I mean, they
Presentation.
can watch the YouTube too. I mean, they can
That's true.
go back and,
It's hard to ask questions on YouTube, though.
true. But they at least get the gist of what the conversation is.
All right, so do we
This
have,
is a big discussion, and so if the mayor's writing that agenda is going to be huge.
And maybe it won't be, I mean.
I mean, when you look at what we have as workshops today, we don't have, we've got three workshops.
Well, maybe that's great.
Pardon?
Yeah, maybe it's just fine.
Yeah, we have 3 workshops and 2 of those are a down zone. One is for that 1400 project, which should be pretty straightforward. And then there's a public utility easement. That's what we're workshopping in addition to the Cache Valley overlay. So my recommendation would be let's do it at the July one, because I think, Jeannie, if you're not going to be here on the 1st, it would be nice to have all 5 of us present, if
You
at all
won't be
possible.
here on the 1st.
She will not be here on the 1st.
Oh, then we need to have Jeannie.
All right, well,
I guess I'll
can I
move,
make a motion as chair?
I'll move that we go on the July meeting. What is it, the last
July 18th.
8? Yeah,
that we
continue it.
continue it. Do you want to continue it with additional public comment or without?
What would you advise on this?
Well, since the bike and pedestrian group has just seen it, perhaps there might be additional comments.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is it possible to identify it's a public hearing limited to new participants?
Probably not wise.
Yeah. All right, so I'm hearing that it should be another public hearing. Okay. So the motion is to continue this matter to July 18th with a public hearing.
That's what I second.
Okay, and you seconded that. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we will readdress this on July 18th. Thank you, everybody, for your public comments. I will encourage people to be mindful that you can email us all the time. Everybody's email addresses are available on the logancity.org website. Phone numbers are also listed there. We do enjoy phone calls as well. Sometimes it's easier than an email to have a conversation about a topic that you feel strongly about. So please make sure that you do take the time to write to us.
And I apologize because I did get those emails. I was thinking we had talked about Sue's
I
before.
haven't seen anything. I would prefer the email so that we could deliberate on them. The phone calls, sometimes I'm going from here to there,
Oh, okay.
or there to here.
No. Okay, we do have 6 more public hearings tonight, so let's move on. The next one is Resolution 23-24, a public hearing on budget adjustments. Rich Anderson, anything you need to update us on for this one?
It's the final budget amendment for fiscal year 23.
And this is the one we modified, correct?
Another one done.
4 items, reimbursements. Mostly the last one is a request to increase budget, but it's because of reimbursement.
Okay.
Or revenue and special revenues.
And that's the one we did that workshop, correct? That 11,250?
That's the one.
Okay. All right, any questions for Rich before we open the public hearing? Okay, at this time then, I'll open the public hearing on Resolution 23-24. If you would like to speak to this, please come up to the podium. These are the most exciting public hearings, because usually no one comes up.
Highly contentious when somebody gives us money and we have to vote
When we
whether
get a
to
grant,
accept it
whether
or
we should
not.
accept it. All right, seeing nobody, I will bring this back to the council for action.
Your turn.
Oh, I move we approve Resolution 23-24.
Second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Resolution 23-24 passes. Our next public hearing is consideration of a proposed resolution approving member contributions to the Utah Retirement System's Contributory Retirement Plan. Ambry.
So just as you read it, it is a resolution that we're approving contributions to our Utah retirement system for our employees. And we do this every year before the budget year, and so that's what this resolution is. Any questions on it?
None for me.
None from me.
Tom?
No.
Okay. This is a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to Resolution 23-22, please come up to the podium.
Dr. Gail B. Yost, live on 100 East in Logan. I think that we need to make sure that our employees, elected employees as well, all get paid for what they're worth and not feel like they're not getting enough worth out of the job and then go elsewhere. So we need to make sure that we keep our staff as well. And I'm very happy to hear that. There are things that I say that are positive too. And I think it's important that we make sure that we keep our staff and our elected officials pleased with what they're doing and that they want to keep going in spite of people like me telling them that I disagree with things.
We're always happy to have you disagree, Gail.
Thanks, Gail.
And to say nice things as well.
So I'm going to presume you're almost speaking to the next two public hearings with your comment today.
Right, because I will note that
Yeah.
council members being part-time employees are not part of the retirement.
We don't get retirement.
Only full-time employees throughout the city, whomever they may be.
Correct, it's just for full-time.
Right. Anybody else like to speak to this one? Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the council for action.
I move we approve Resolution 23-22.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Resolution 23-22 passes. The next is a public hearing on ordinance 23-17. This is a proposed ordinance adopting elected official wage for 23-24.
Yep, this one we're proposing a 4% increase for council and for mayor for this next budget year.
Any questions for Ambry before we open the public hearing?
No.
And I would just note that I've said that if there is an increase approved, I would choose to donate my increase back to the city for a project.
Thanks, Mayor Daines. All right. This is a public hearing. Anyone who would like to come and speak to ordinance 23-17, please come to the podium and state your name and keep your comments to 3 minutes if possible. Seeing no one, I will bring it back to the council for action.
Since I'm not running for council again, and I can't be voted out of office at this time,
You sure about that? I think we have a process.
I guess there could be an impeachment.
But short of that.
And you're going.
I will vote that we approve this 23-17. And I appreciate again Ambry's and the mayor's work on this so that we don't have this reticence to do anything. We went, 8 or 9 years where we couldn't talk about it because who wants to vote for this kind of thing? So now you can vote me out.
I think you meant you move approval, not that you vote for it. Are you moving?
I'm moving approval.
And
You're moving, you're making a motion to approve.
I make a motion. I
Okay.
thought that was,
Yeah.
okay.
Since I'm the only, man standing over here, I will second it. I think that Amber did an amazing job of talking about the fact that whoever is sitting here needs to be compensated at least reasonably equitably to other communities in the state. And so I appreciate that work, and although I probably would do this for free, but because I enjoy what I do, but I will second that. Anyway.
Yeah, it is an awkward thing, but I do recognize that while some people do serve for the public good, there are people that it is important to be compensated for the time that they invest in, and it might take them away from other responsibilities. But it is certainly not a comfortable place to be sitting when things like this come up. So, any further discussion? All right, all in favor of ordinance 23-17, indicate aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
We should have made Mark and Ernesto call in.
I don't want to vote no.
Thanks, Ambry. All right, our next public hearing is on Logan City budget transfers for 2023. Rich?
This is a required public hearing, required by state statute. We are required to speak to two things. The first is transfers, and the second is administrative fees, all within the same code section, but they are completely different things. So I'll just kind of read this statement, which we've talked about these many times, but for anybody who's new. A transfer is the movement of cash or other resources from one fund to another. Logan City has utilized transfers from enterprise funds as a general fund financing mechanism for many years. My research goes back at least 30 plus years. If budgeted for and planned for correctly, transfers from enterprise funds can help defray the cost of services such as public safety, public works, parks and rec, and other general government services, and consequently keep property taxes low. The Logan City Council closely regulates transfers from enterprise funds as a percentage of budgeted revenue. Council Resolution 15-40 established transfers from enterprise funds as follows: 7% from water, 5.5% from sewer treatment, and 8% from electric and environmental. Transfers from enterprise funds require special noticing and are contemplated and incorporated into each and every utility rate study and master plan. In other words, transfers do not just happen, but they are carefully regulated and planned. But for transfers, to maintain the same level of service in the general fund, Logan City's only viable alternative would be a property tax increase. Because of number one, the high concentration of state, federal, religious, and other non-taxable entities within Logan City's boundaries, and because of number two, the fact that Logan City also provides services on a contract basis outside its boundaries for which it receives a transfer. Having said that, for every dollar that transfers are reduced, the Logan City Finance Department estimates that the average residential home would pay an additional $2.40 to compensate. To clarify and reiterate, to reduce transfers by $1 would require a $2.40 increase in property taxes. Shifting the general fund financing burden from non-taxable entities, such as residences and businesses, to taxable entities. Yeah, taxable entities such as residences, businesses, would be unfair. From the perspective of the non-taxable entities within the boundaries of the City of Logan, and the contract cities to which Logan City provides services, if our rates are reasonable, which is defined by the Finance Department as equal to a competitive price plus the transfer, and if these entities are receiving satisfactory service, then it follows that these entities should be reasonably satisfied. In other words, if these entities are receiving good services at a reasonable price, there's no reason to be dissatisfied about the transfer itself. After all, privately held utilities have long been known for their consistent dividends paid to their investors. No one would expect an investor to incur risk of loss without compensation. This is also true of the City of Logan. The citizens of Logan, the owners and investors, receive this return on investment in the form of a transfer to the general fund. Now to administrative fees. Administrative fees are also required to be discussed. However, they're very different. Administrative fees are charged for centralized services provided by the general fund to the other funds of the city. Such services include but are not limited to utility billing, accounting, payroll, legal, human resources, shops and garage, facilities, and facilities management. Administrative fees are allocated by the finance department in a reasonable and rational manner. In other words, admin fees, they're getting something for it. Transfers is simply a financing mechanism.
Any questions for Rich?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
All right, this is a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to the budget transfer and administrative fees, please come forward to the podium. Okay, seeing nobody. Is this something we need to take action on, or is it just a reporting?
No, I think it's an action item.
I don't believe it is. I believe just public hearing. The action will be
The budget.
the budget will be later adopted. This is just their opportunity
Okay.
to speak specifically to that.
To this issue. Okay. Thank you, Rich. If you would like to then, we do have our next public hearing, which is for Resolution 23-25. This is consideration of a resolution approving the certified property tax rate, not a tax increase, of .000990 for calendar year 2023 and the fiscal year 23-24.
Property tax law in Utah is very confusing. It is meant to control how much Logan City gets, not necessarily how much individuals pay. However, the general theory is if we do not pass a tax increase, we do not get additional funds to the city from our existing customers. The only additional funds we receive is new growth, which are new customers demanding new service. And so this fiscal year 24, we are proposing we do not raise property taxes. Much of this was in contemplation with the mayor and council just regarding the economy being in flux, significant increases in the prices of residential housing and how that might be distributed if we raise rates just a little bit, just to combat inflation, let's say 3 or 4%. That could result in drastic effects because of increases in home values. So our proposal is not to increase taxes this year. However, we do anticipate proposing this in the future because, again, without a property tax increase, we don't get inflationary adjustments in property tax. So the proposal is a rate of .000990, which is not a property tax increase.
And so if people see an increase in their bill, likely that is not because Logan City has raised their taxes, but because county assessment or the school district could raise taxes. So although the bill goes up, it's not necessarily reflective of Logan City getting additional revenues.
And they do revalue homes on a regular basis.
The county, yeah.
The county does. But the county manages all of that. We just get the percentage that we have approved in this particular resolution, and the county does everything else.
Okay. Any questions for Rich? Clear as mud?
No, I think we've talked about this many times.
So this is a public hearing. If anyone would like to come and speak to Resolution 23-25, please come to the podium. Gail's like, woohoo, no tax increase.
Gail Yost. Thank you for not increasing the tax this year. Thank you, all of you, because we have had a lot of expenses, and some of it is due to even the pandemic and having supply problems with getting the things that we needed for our home. So it is nice to not have our home be exploited for more tax at this point. Anyway, thank you.
I'm not laughing at you, I'm just laughing at that whole concept of a house being exploited.
Anybody else? Seeing nobody, I'll bring it back to the council for action.
I move we approve resolution 23-25.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 23-25, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Resolution 23-25 passes. Our final public hearing for the night is Resolution 23-26. Rich, this is the approval of the final revenue and expenditures for fiscal year 23-24 budget.
We have workshopped the mayor's budget. We've had multiple hearings and parts and pieces have been discussed. This is a request to appropriate $201,830,702, which is the fiscal year 24, which is to be this fiscal year 24 council adopted budget. Minor adjustments were made between the mayor's budget and the proposed council adopted. I'm required to true up the property tax rates, which we just passed. Those result in minor differences between original estimates. Also, any other items that the council discussed that we may have changed here or there. Otherwise, it's exactly as we have workshopped. It is $200 million. That's a lot.
It is. Any questions for Rich or for Mayor Daines before we open the public hearing? Nope. Okay. This is a public hearing on our fiscal budget for next year, Resolution 23-26. If anyone would like to come and speak to the budget, please come to the podium.
Oh, it's a quiet room.
It is a quiet room.
They should be screaming.
No, they should be screaming.
Cheering.
For joy, that's what I meant.
All right.
I will.
Seeing no public comment, I will bring this back to the council for action.
I will say that we did have special meetings in between our regular meetings in May. We heard from all the department heads and asked extensive questions of what they're planning and how that fits into the budget. And the mayor has been generous enough to keep us in the loop throughout this whole budget process, and Rich reminds us all the time what we can and can't do. So I feel very comfortable with this budget and going forward. But it's your turn.
Yeah, so
Is it your motion?
No, it's your turn.
motion. Did you have any comments?
Well, I hear repeatedly from citizens and others what a well-run city this is. And this is not just the mayor, but the mayor has a major role in this.
We have a great team.
And I have great confidence, other council members, but a huge credit goes to the department heads and also the workers. We have a great city.
Right.
And so I'm proud of that.
Their mentality is truly to be very wise and careful and cautious with the taxpayer dollar, which is what they should do. They try and spend it on worthwhile projects and save money whatever they can, and
And this was a challenging year because we did kind of modify how budgets were put together. So it was a learning curve for all of our department heads. And I think it shows in some of the ways that they presented at those budget workshops, kind of identifying what the key needs of their departments were, where they saw potential growth, and not just planning for this year, but thinking a little bit longer term in terms of not this is this year, but where do we go over the next few years? So
exactly.
I'll move acceptance unless Jeannie would like to. You've been part of this more than I have. I missed a meeting. You want me to? Thank you, Jeannie. So I would move acceptance of resolution 2326. Pardon? I'm looking at the sheet here. Did I say that?
Yep, 2326.
Okay. Approval for our budget for this year 23-24.
I will second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of resolution 23-26, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're budgeted.
Now, there's three of us. There's a motion and a second, and we all said yes, and now you're saying, who's against it?
You never know.
It's a
You never
formality.
know. It's a formality. It's a formality. But thank you, everybody, for your work on this. Since our fiscal year does start next Friday, it's important that we pass the budget tonight so that we can make sure that our citizens' services continue because their staff continues to get paid.
And Rich was very concerned that we all be here.
There really is no other window.
Yeah. So,
And I'm all here, so.
and we're only 10 minutes behind our
Good job,
agenda.
Rich.
Good job, Teresa, for our agenda tonight. We'll now move on to our workshop items. The first is a down zone ordinance 23-21. This is something that we've talked about in the past, but Russ, you want to just give us a quick refresh?
Yes, so this is the Jed Willits property that was recently upzoned about 2 months ago because his permits had expired. Under your direction, I immediately filed a down zone to put it back to MR12, and that's simply what this is just taking it back to MR12.
Any questions for Russ?
So if it doesn't get built again,
It's down zone to MR12.
down zone to MR12, so the process would have to start all over again.
Yes.
Thank you.
He has a design review permit, and he has 1 year to file his building permit. The clock is ticking.
And one would presume that given the process he's had to go through over the last few months, that action will happen.
Yes, you would think you would not let it expire twice.
Okay. All right, well, we will have a public hearing on that next
Just wanted to clear that one up.
on July 18th, right? July 18th? Yep. Okay. Our next workshop item is consideration of a Cache Valley Marketplace concept plan. Russ, why don't you walk us through this?
Yes, so this is kind of like the cart and the horse are kind of driving simultaneously because this is really the first step in what we're calling the plan development or the PD overlay process. We started talking about this with the Sugar Creek project a couple months back, and the plan development overlay allows more flexibility for very unique projects that don't fit under a current zoning regulation. And it's a process that involves a code amendment, so we actually adopt a section of code that's specific to that project. It would replace any sort of voluntary deed restriction process that we've done in the past. And a overlay on our zoning map that would identify this project as a PD overlay. Now, one of the main qualifiers for this PD overlay is it has to be a project that doesn't reasonably work within our current zoning. If all we want to do is upzone it and do a fourplex, we're not going to go through this PD overlay process because they could go through an MR12 process. It only applies to projects where it just doesn't fit in one way or another. And this project before you tonight is actually a pretty good example. And so the concept plan is the first informal step. So it's just an introduction. And the Planning Commission saw the concept plan last Thursday. And there's really no action taken at the Planning Commission level. And the action tonight is informal feedback, saying, yeah, we like this concept, or no, we don't like this concept, and here's the reasons why. And then they would take that feedback and come back with a formal application for a PD overlay rezone, code amendment, and design review for the project.
That they mean being a developer.
They being the applicant, yeah, developer. And the Cache Valley Marketplace is planning to take that next step at Planning Commission for the formal application. But let me...
Can I ask a question then?
Yes.
So then as far as public comment and public ability to kind of render their thoughts and opinions at this concept plan stage, that is not included. It's only when it comes back to planning, when there's an actual action item on it.
So there's not, at least the way I understand it, there's not a public or a formal public comment period when it's workshopped as a concept plan. That could be, I mean, maybe changed in the future, or maybe there's other ways to receive comment. But once it goes to Planning Commission to start the actual formal project application, then obviously there's comment periods available at that time.
See, I do have a question about that, because that, I mean, and I know that we're workshopping it, so that's why. But if you are creating a concept in partnership with the Planning Commission and the staff to create, quote unquote, a better product in a space that doesn't accommodate it easily with zoning, it doesn't seem prudent for us to not have some way of for the public to interact with that process. Because right now, it's the Planning Commission can't talk about the project outside of Planning Commission because of their quasi-judiciary. The planning staff is talking about it internally. They present it with the developer. Then everybody hears it all at once, and the Planning Commission and you have had an opportunity to weigh in, but then you have given them the go-ahead for a project plan, and then the public gets to comment. That seems like it's a little bit not in a good order for, we always tell the public to be a part of the beginning, not when it's built next to you. And we're saying if we're doing this, we're not allowing them to be a part at the beginning. So that's my comment.
Yeah, and it is interesting because if they were just going for a regular commercial, if it fit the zone, then there would be no need for the public input except for at the Planning Commission level. I mean, it wouldn't even come to us because there would be no zoning change. So I think I'm kind of a genie. I'm trying to figure out how do we ensure that, I mean, especially for a project this large, right? I've already, gotten comments from people on this and they don't even necessarily know what it is the plan is. So that's just a concern. I mean, that's not really necessarily related to what you're presenting tonight, but just in general, I think as we move forward, I think it would behoove us to really think about where or how can there be public comment made, even if it's not like a public hearing, but what might be the methodology to hear from the public on something like this.
That's a good thought. And at this point, again, if you're getting emails about it, that would allow you to have at least informal public feedback. And again, this is an informal process. So we would welcome your comments, and then we will pass them along to the developer. Again, if there are comments about how to make this a better project or concerns or whatever. So please direct those to me, to planning staff, and to Kirk. We'll make sure that comes back.
I'm not necessarily talking about this.
Okay.
I'm
but
just
in the
talking
future,
about the future, and I'm also, my question is, can this overlay be applied to mixed use, for example?
It can be overlaid on top of any zone in the city. The base zone should be something similar. You wouldn't want this project to be a PD overlay on top of NR6.
Or industrial.
Or industrial. You do want the closest possible zone to be that underzone, and that's part of that rezone process when it goes through the formal adoption. But the reason I said the cart and the horse are kind of paralleling right now.
Yeah, because the code amendment is pending right now,
The
too.
PD code amendment is starting planning commission this Thursday.
Right.
And if you have concerns about the concept plan not, having an opportunity for public comment, that code amendment can be modified and adopted so that it could require some sort of public hearing at the concept plan phase.
Okay.
But that hasn't been debated
Okay.
in a legislative manner yet.
Oh,
You will
that's
see
fine.
that in July, assuming Planning Commission doesn't continue it and they recommend right away. Yes?
The public will have an opportunity to weigh in the next meeting, correct?
Nope, this is just,
This is a workshop.
yeah, but it's not a workshop on an amendment, or resolution or an ordinance.
And again, that process could be modified as we set the rules for the
Right.
PD. But
So
right
give us
now,
feedback on what you think.
Yeah.
but right now, the idea is it would come as a workshop, and again, it's not a formal vote. It's, hey, we really like this concept, yes, move forward, and now formalize it with an application. So the concept doesn't take the two-step process like you're used to. Does that make sense?
So we'll see this 17.27 code amendment when it comes out of planning in like a month. So we're talking about that and we're talking about a project at the same time.
Yeah.
In the future, that piece will already be done, so any project would just fall underneath the things that I have a question about right now. So not this, but that.
And here's the reason why, and it's starting to take so much time.
No, that's all right.
Developers invest a lot of money up front for these kind of things. To render these things, Tom, as well as anybody, it takes a lot of time and money to put these projects and package them up. And we feel like if it's a concept plan, you don't spend quite as much money, because if someone comes up with a concept and quite frankly it's garbage and nobody likes it, no one on the planning commission, no one on the council, we don't want them to continue to put money and time and effort into that concept plan. Go back to the drawing board, start over. And so that's kind of what our thought process was. We don't want them to spend too much time, money, and effort for something that, we have no idea if it's going to have wings or not.
But it's also not a paper napkin thing.
Yes, right.
It's not a paper napkin thing, right? It's not someone drawing on a napkin and saying,
Yeah.
hey, city council, hey, planning commission, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, these plans will show enough detail, but yeah, that's the balancing act, is you, as legislators, need enough detail to say, okay, I do have confidence that this could work and this project can be a good thing. And they're going to have to lay out basics like, densities and heights and stuff like that. The concept plan shouldn't be considered a blank check, but it should be considered, okay, we like the idea, we like this project, we like these parameters. Now go forth with the design review and the final documents.
So do we give feedback tonight or at some other time? I may be just learning on this.
On the code.
I think you want to give feedback twice, both tonight and then obviously in the future. But it's the type of again, it's more conceptual feedback at this point, and so you're just looking kind of at the big general issues. Yeah. Don't get worried about like the color of brick right now.
No.
That's to come later down the road. But yeah, if there's a density problem or a big mass problem, something like that, then yes, let's give feedback tonight. Okay, so the concept plan that we're considering tonight is the Cache Valley Marketplace. And so this is the Cache Valley Mall. The developer is proposing to redevelop the approximately 29 acre site. Originally the mall was almost 40, I think it was about 37 acres. A couple years ago it was subdivided up though, and a lot of these pad sites out on the Main Street like 8th and Main, Quick Quack, Arby's, Cache Valley Bank, and along 2nd East as well, were subdivided off of the mall site. Texas Roadhouse was also subdivided off, but they've kind of been included here because there's some new cross easements. But now it's about 28 acres. The proposal is for a new 150,000 square foot retailer. This would be the big box, is what a lot of people call that. And it's here in the red.
How does that compare with the existing square footage of the mall?
That is a good
In
question.
size.
It is smaller than the mall footprint,
Yeah.
but I do not have the exact square footage of the mall.
Oh, geez, I'm not sure of
Kurt's,
that either.
Kurt's going to look that up for me.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. In addition to the 150 square feet is 21,000 additional retail square feet down here in this hatched area that would be placed underneath a hotel that would contain 156 rooms. So the main lobby, the entrance to the hotel is this dark blue area right here. And then upper floors would extend out over this retail. And there's some better renderings here that we'll go over. The other component to this is new residential housing in the form of a stacked apartment building. And so it's 346 multifamily units. And then there's some amenities, there's a swimming pool and some covered parking. The dark kind of blue and black line here is the project boundary. All of the white area is parking. There's some landscaping, we'll go over that. And then this green hatched area is what they're referring to as a public easement or a public throughway. It's not like a typical road. It may kind of resemble our new Center Street, where it's kind of a slow street. There's 2 lanes. There's a lot of parking, and there's some sidewalks there, and that's going through here. So that would go on the south side of the new anchor, and then north of the new hotel. There's a little pull out here as well. There's kind of a canopy pickup drop-off area.
So it starts at 1250 off of Main and then jogs down to the south.
Correct. So this is between Main Street here on the left, 2nd East on the right, 250 North, and 1400 North. It's almost 4 city blocks.
So the western edge of the road is the current entrance to the mall? Is that correct?
Correct, yes. So that location does not change.
Okay.
And then let me go over the access, because this one's existing and proposed to remain. This one is existing and proposed to shift slightly. And then this one is existing, proposed to remain. There is some changes here on 2nd East. I think the existing one's about here, and so they're moving it down several hundred feet. And then this one remains the same on 1250, and then these two actually this one moves over to here. So there's a total of, what is it, about 10 or 12 access points into this super block area. Okay, so as part of the PD request is, you were right, this could work in the commercial zone from the commercial square footage standpoint, but it would not allow the freestanding apartments on the east side. If they were to pursue mixed-use zoning, they would satisfy the minimum square footage of commercial, and they would be allowed the freestanding residential. So mixed use is probably the closer of the two, but there's one problem with the mixed use, and it was a recent change that we made, is mixed use requires ground floor commercial on any collector or arterial, and 200 East is a collector, and so there's no ground floor commercial here. Otherwise, it would be really close to the mixed-use zone. What they're asking for, let me go through these actually first. So this shows some of the landscaping, and
From a different angle.
That's a different orientation.
sorry,
That's all
it's
right.
rotated. So north is on the right.
I'll just turn my head this way.
So I'll go over landscaping with their request, but this kind of shows a perspective. So we're kind of hovering over the Home Depot right now, or actually closer to the Olive Garden. We're kind of looking north east. And so this is the large anchor retailer. It's a big box, single floor, very high roof structure. And 1400 North is just north of that building. This is the area that shows the hotel on top of the commercial. And it's a little bit hard to see because of this canopy that they have, but these are storefronts under here. And then the hotel is this larger kind of L-shaped, it's a 4-story building. And then back here are the multifamily. And so it's a 4-story structure. And then second east is kind of on that backside. The street in the foreground here is 1200 North Street. Okay.
1250. So can you scroll back to that?
Yes.
So that commercial area with the awning, so if that was a coffee shop, they could have patio seating there? Is that wide enough for like little tables and chairs if someone's like, if Dunkin' Donuts is there and wants to have a couple outside tables?
I think that's the intent of this concept plan.
Okay.
There's some flexibility there. I don't know if that has been detailed, but yeah, there's a wide sidewalk there that could, have some furnishings or some other types of things.
Okay.
And this walkway would connect in front of here too. Some of the pedestrian circulation I think needs to be worked on a little bit. Sort of like maybe some crosswalks right here. And crosswalks. But yeah, that's the idea, is that's more storefront.
And does those storefronts go all the way through the building, or is there also storefronts on the east side?
It would be one tenant, and this would be the front, and that would be the back. On the back side, there may be like a loading door, receiving. And it could be restaurants, it could be retail, things of that nature in this area. So this is looking straight on to the big box. And by the way, Kurt just gave me this, the mall's about 300,000 square feet right now.
This would be 131?
150. No, 150 for the big box plus an additional 20, so you're about 170.
Compared to 3, okay.
And the mall is what?
300,000. And so this is looking basically straight east at the front of the big box here. The hotel's over here. You can kind of see the lobby entrance to the hotel here. And then in the background, you see those apartment buildings.
So I'm going to ask a Rich question. So from a taxable standpoint, though, the hotel is a commercial business and you would be receiving tax revenue from that, not too dissimilarly from a store, correct? I mean, it's a different.
Well,
The hotel?
The hotel it does generate tax revenue. It's
Property
not.
tax revenue or?
Yes, property tax and tax, like.
As well as the
room
residential, but
taxes.
residential is reduced by 45%.
Is the hotel square footage included in the commercial square footage?
no. That 20,000 square feet is just
the
those
bottom.
first floor storefronts.
So you've probably got 20,000 times 4, at least.
In terms of hotel room tax and things like that.
Well, no, just in terms of
Square footage.
commercial space.
Yeah.
So you'd have to times the 20,000 times 4, so you've got 80.
Because the first floor is already counted.
Well, total you'd have 80.
Okay. Plus
So-
the 150.
Plus the 150, so you're at, you're close to the square footage that was the mall, is the mall. Overall.
Correct, yes. All right.
I'm just like, is my thinking off? Everybody's staring at me kind of blankly. I'm thinking it's really more commercial space than the 170. Okay.
Yeah, 156 rooms. I'm not sure what an average room size would be.
But
They're about 400.
It does go
400
this way
square feet.
and then this way, so it's even a little bit more.
Just some more images here, give you an idea of scale and mass. Top left is again from above Home Depot. This is looking directly off of 2nd East, so they have a pool here. It's hard to see, but this would be the back of the big box right behind there. This shows the front of the hotel a little bit better. So this is that kind of interior street as well. Again, not a ton of detail at this point, just kind of give you some ideas. And then this shows the residential, kind of a unique parapet design there. This shows those storefronts a little bit better, and so you get an idea. Probably 12 to 15 feet of sidewalk width there. The canopy overhead. This shows it from a little more straight on. This one would be looking at the existing mall entrance, looking directly into the project from Main Street. More of the residential. This is a proposed sign amendment. So let me go over the changes that they would like to request, and it's part of this exhibit that was in the packet. For starters, they would like a parking lot interior landscaping variance that doesn't require the 36 square feet of interior parking, or excuse me, interior landscaping when you have parking lots that exceed the base requirement of 125%. So the idea around that code is the bigger the parking lot gets, the more landscaping we feel like it needs to kind of offset the visual impacts of that amount of asphalt, but also the environmental impacts when you got that amount of asphalt. Shade trees and things like that are good. They're requesting that it just stay the standard 18 square feet, which is typical for most projects that you see built recently. This is a standard that was adopted about 7 or 8 years ago, so newer projects will have that parking lot landscaping. And it doesn't have to be islands right in the middle. It can also be what we call the perimeter, so it's the edge. In the corner of a parking lot, you can't park a car like all the way to the corner, so you have these like kind of fold out things. That's a good example of parking lot landscaping. Signage, they would like a variance in signage that, and they say variance, but I don't think variance is the term here. It would be adopted as part of that PD code language that would specifically entitle them to a bigger sign. And so they would follow that set of rules rather than our standard set of rules. And they want a sign that's 16 feet tall, about 15 feet wide. About 20 years ago, the city made a pretty concerted effort to lower signage and really encourage the monument style sign. So right now, our rules are 8 feet tall and 72 square feet. And so this one goes from 8 feet up to 16 feet in height, and then 154 square feet. The thing about signage, though, is it takes a long time to phase out signs. Businesses that have these tall pole signs, they're grandfathered in, and they usually just will swap out. And so even though this has been on the books for 20 years, there's still some taller signs out there. But as you look at the newer development, you see lower signs from a planning or urban design standpoint. We feel that is important because it tries to emphasize architecture, give a little better, sense of place or character. But it's context specific too. If you're next to a freeway, obviously our sign rules wouldn't probably be conducive for businesses. But it's context specific. I will say that we did increase some of the sizes for the Al Sporting Goods project, if you remember that. So we allowed a little bit bigger sign with a little bit bigger EFD.
Because they had
Because they had so much frontage and acreage. And this would qualify for that, but what they're asking for is more than what the Al's
And they also
were granted.
do they want 3 of them on one property?
Well, the way the code reads is you get 1 sign per street and then 1 extra sign for every 450. And since they actually have 4 streets, they would be given 4 signs, plus they have frontage. So the project would allow up to, I think by right today, more than 6 signs.
But at a smaller
it's-
size.
Yeah, it's not the quantity that's the issue, it's the size is what they're requesting.
So they're requesting 3 instead of 6, but bigger signs than what they would be allowed underneath our current code, is what I'm hearing.
Well, actually, let me go back, because I think it's 4, and I apologize, I should know that.
It's all right.
But let's see, so it's 1, 2, 3. Oh, you're right, 3.
Well, I will say, having been behind people where they don't see a sign until it's like right on top of them and they slam their brakes on because they're like, oh crap, that's where I wanted to turn. Sometimes signage is not necessarily a bad thing on a busy road.
Yes, for wayfinding purposes, I totally agree. The other one is density, and this one really depends on how it's entitled, because if you look at it as an overall project and the 28 acres, it's well under the mixed use density of 20 or even commercial's 30. If it's entitled and permitted totally separately, where they're saying, okay, we're going to carve off the back and we're going to permit that totally separately, then it would need the density increase.
To what?
They're asking for 50 units per acre. But if you do the calculation of the overall, I think it was about 12 units per acre.
So it's MR50 if you just look at the housing.
If you just look at the housing,
footprint
yes.
of where it is, but it's spread out, it's MR12.
Yeah, but we'll typically do gross density when we do projects like this. We've got a mixed-use project going before the Planning Commission Thursday, and that's going to be a gross density, even though they've got portions. So it's how it's reviewed and permitted.
Well, you have it with almost every project. It's 30 acres and they have MR12. They could technically put this many units on it. They may move them over here.
Right.
Because they have a big pond in the back of the piece of property. So we do already do that.
Yes, we do.
So you count the whole project, and if they put them, we don't usually do the cluster kind of denser development in a smaller square footage. And maybe that's a difference, because usually you'll say, well, you've got 30 acres, that means you can have this many units.
Yep.
And if they, that particular development I'm talking about, he wanted to have more units, but he wanted different housing types, and we didn't have any ability to do that. Plus, he needed to cluster them a little bit tighter in certain spots. And so I think that asking for that clustering is not unusual, but
Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal. The only fear, I guess, is if the big box came in separately.
Right.
And was permitted totally separately. Then the back part was sold and came in 2 years later and was totally separate. Then it would be a density issue, but I don't think that's the case. This is going to be one project review and approval. But that's the only comment I have on the density. The other one is the ground floor residential for that 200 East, and I talked about that. and some setbacks on the interior, but that shouldn't be a problem again with the project review. So that's the concept plan, kind of in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any other questions, or if you have feedback. The applicant is not here tonight, but I do believe they're tuning in, or they can kind of read the minutes. We can get them the feedback that they need.
So what is the difference between what would be required in terms of landscaping in the parking lots and what they are requesting to be able to do in terms of overall acreage? Or
so that goes back to when you propose a project that is 125% bigger parking lot than our code, it triggers that double landscaping.
Right.
And our code's pretty geared in a way that it usually doesn't trigger double, but sometimes it does. And the big box, they get really busy on Black Friday and certain other times.
They like to park.
They like to park and plan for those certain times. But what you see before you here is pretty much our standard 18 square feet, which means about every 20 stalls, you have the equivalent in an island or one of those corner pockets.
Okay.
If that kind of helps you visualize it.
And will they have trees?
Yes, this plan doesn't show it, but again, you got a row of about 40 here, and you've got 2 islands. So this is about 18% here. And then they're not requesting a change in the trees, because those would be standard in here as well. There was one thing that Mike wanted me to mention, though, is it could also allow for some off-site, this PD overlay. Sometimes we'll have a park that maybe needs trees, or we'll have some public property that needs to be improved, and this could be kind of a transfer of some of that landscaping. So maybe the interior landscaping, we still hold the double standard, but that's transferred to an off-site location that could receive that amount of landscape or improvement. So that's also a thought.
That sounds like putting your wetlands out in the Bear River Valley and calling them.
And maybe with this denser project, you do need extra green space and landscaping to make it a livable development at this level.
Yeah.
I'm looking at an overview shot of Cache Valley Mall's parking lot right now, and this actually looks like it has more green space than the current Cache Valley Mall.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Not that that's a reason to give them the variance, but
It does improve the landscaping square footage. But the comment has often been made, like, why would I want to live, in the Cache Valley parking lot? Why would I, want to move downtown and live in a parking lot? And the answer I give is, well, it wouldn't be a parking lot anymore. You have to totally transform the space and make it livable, and make it so it doesn't feel like a parking lot.
Because people are building it so that it can be empty.
Yeah.
Well, we've also discussed with, the new right-of-way that goes right through the center, that needs to be very pedestrian-friendly and have pedestrian amenities. And, we've talked about, tonight we talked about the transportation master plan. I mean, you could live in one of these developments and not need a car. I mean, you think as you age in place as senior citizens that maybe
walk to Culver's.
Yeah, I mean, you can walk to restaurants, you can walk to groceries, you can walk to, there's transit there. So, and again, it is a location that's already planned for, high traffic counts anyway. So again, it really, as our city redevelops, it's going to need to densify, and, is this a location that makes sense? And again, do you, through this planned unit this overlay, do you get the project you want by allowing some things that make sense to make it a better project?
Well, having recently lived in a townhome development here in our beautiful city, I had this much green space in front of my place, and the back was a driveway. So, there was a reason we chose to live there, for location and size and proximity to where we worked. So, we did not have a gigantic green space near us. So, yeah, people make choices based on a wide variety of things. But green space may be one of them for some people. So.
And again, I mean, the housing, again, we're creating an overlay, but I'm assuming the housing would really be held to our same general zoning standards in terms of usable open space and that sort of thing, or that would at least be a starting place for discussion?
Yeah, again, you look at that base zone, like the mixed use, and it says 20% of your site needs to be landscaped or converted to some sort of usable outdoor, and their pool and other amenities like that would count towards that. And they're not asking for a variance in that part of it.
I have,
So they would, sorry, Tom.
no, go ahead.
So what you're saying is they're not so they would be complying with the mixed-use requirements for outdoor space and open space, or would they be complying with an MR 30?
I think those are the same standards. It's that 20% rule.
Okay.
The way I understand it, their only request is that parking lot landscaping being doubled from 18 square feet to 36 square feet.
And the 20% does not include personal balconies, right? In mixed use?
No.
At all?
Not personal. It's got to be common area or accessible area, not a private. If it were a rooftop, terrace where everybody could get there,
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
But not a private
I
balcony.
I'm just verbalizing what I think I know. But
I have 6 either questions or weighing in comments. First of all, the right-of-way, it sounds good, but it looks like an alley. It looks thin, and you got angled parking on both sides. I think it'd be dangerous to drive through there with people backing out and in. If this is truly what it's billed at, is a public right-of-way. It may be owned by the public, but it doesn't act like a through way. Do you know what I'm saying?
But I think Russ used the example of Center Street, which has the angled parking. I mean, we narrowed that street, and with the angled parking, it does slow down traffic. I mean, and again, we widened the sidewalks there. I don't know what the proposed widths are here, but again, that was a deliberate decision.
Well, I don't know the dimension here. It would matter. I mean, typically you'd have like 24 feet between bumpers, north and south. You could add 5 or 6 feet and have it be safer and a little less squeezed. I get what you're saying, and I appreciate that that's a rather short
How does this
one.
compare to Station Park? Have you ever been to Station Park?
Oh, yeah, we designed it.
Yeah, I mean, how wide, when you're in that kind of shopping area, those are not terribly wide. They're not terribly wide, and they do have parking along there.
I don't think they have diagonals both sides. I mean, they have little bulb outs. They have little notches, into the curb.
No, that's what I'm just saying, I know that that's a place as well as in Salt Lake. What's the one? The original, where the Gateway has parking and people moving back and forth, and that's...
Teaser parking. You can never get a space in there.
But again, I'm just wondering, I don't know, that's not terribly wide through there. That's not as wide as the city street.
That's a teaser.
This won't be a shortcut street. You won't see people cutting through here because of the tightness and the speed. Again, Station Park, you don't shortcut through Station Park.
No, you avoid it.
You avoid it, and you're driving very slow.
Or you're lost and you're like, oops, I really should have been parking.
I say that only as a comment for their consideration, so that is a safe street. Okay, second, there's a question, is there structured parking for the housing?
No. There's enclosed garages but they're not multi-story. They're essentially a carport with walls.
Okay.
There's an image if you want me to look.
Because they bill it as luxury, and people living in a luxury are concerned for their safety, so if they have to walk 200 feet through a parking lot, it's not safe.
So, sorry, let me take that back, because there are a couple of interior garages on some of these facades. So right here, there would be a single row of garages, but they don't have a picture of the.
So some
that's this wall right
units have a
here.
garage, but not all.
Yeah, so Tom, that's this wall right here actually has garages that are part of the building footprint.
Okay.
And this wall, but all of these kind of light brown garages are just kind of a standalone.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, we don't have to solve it all, just a concern.
Okay.
It says there's subdivision, what is it, lots? In the
5.
description, it's talking about a 6-lot subdivision or something?
Yeah.
Where is that?
I believe it's 5. So if you follow these interior dash dot lines, so that would be lot number 6.
So there's 6 single-family homes on those lots?
No. There's no single-family homes, but there's parcels that contain multifamily structures.
Not part of this count?
So it's not considered 6 different projects?
Right, that goes back to my comment earlier of how we permit and entitle this. So they're saying there's 6 lots, but we can approve a mixed-use project with 6 lots or 10 lots.
Well, we did it out on 2nd North and 6th West,
Yeah.
because it was developed by different funding mechanisms.
Yes.
Which required them to subdivide it.
Okay, so we'll come back to that maybe. Let me do 2 other quickie things. Bus, I think it needs to be focused so that the bus system can bring people to the door, not drop them off out on the curb and have them walk 400 feet. If the bus system is to work, you gotta get them to the door of the hotel, get them to the door of their housing, get them to the, not an absolute door, but at least to the entry to that section. So it ought to be.
That's a good point, Tom.
Thank you.
A really good point. Because it doesn't appear that there's any bus infrastructure allowed within what they spec'd.
To my knowledge, there's no bus changes. But I'm
Well, it ought to be
informed
integrated
on
into
that.
here a little better. That's what I'm saying. Okay?
Sometimes it's challenging for the bus system.
Well, I mean, even a bus
part of
stop.
their route.
But that could be an integrated
But
discussion.
isn't there a bus stop right off 1200 East? I mean, not 200.
There is currently one on 200 East.
On the other side of the street.
Yeah, it's,
So would it be
Well-
appropriate to have one internal to the project?
But you just want to make sure maybe there's access to the project from the bus stop.
well, if we're truly talking about mobility like we were earlier, I think the bus system, if they're going to have the volume that I expect they're going to have, would allow the bus or accommodate for the bus to get through there somehow,
Well, on that public street,
if that works for that, yeah.
yeah. But I mean, that would be the logical place to create some bus infrastructure to
It
make a
would.
landing place for people.
It would.
Within the confines of that public street.
The next comment is that we can put little scatterings of plantings and, like a tree and whatever. We can have those things around, and while I like that, you hardly notice it. I think it would make more sense if you could concentrate and amalgamate, bring to have more of a green walk mall, something so that it's a green space. If you look at Station Park, it's highly planted, it's highly green. The parking lots are not very friendly, but they're not intended to be friendly. But the green space on the interior streets are. And it's a very pleasant European-like downtown kind of thing, okay? That's all. I got one more comment.
Just to add to that,
Yeah.
so 28 acres would be around 6 acres of open space and green space, right? That's 20%, a little bit less. What you're saying is maybe a bigger, more meaningful chunk of that.
Instead of little
rather than
blades of grass
scattered.
here and there, to do something that's meaningful. Okay? And the last one is kind of a holistic look at it. It doesn't seem very people-centric. I mean, we have a big box that faces west. We have a hotel that faces north, and it's not really connected. We have housing that's got a huge parking lot in between the big box and the housing. I'm just wondering if they could invert this and create it so that it is connected in a people-centric way. That's just an observation I have, partly from my experience as an architect, to look at these things and to make it, they're not connected people-wise. They're on a site that shares a boundary, but they're not connected. So you say, well, let's go from the hotel over to the big box and do some, let's go to the restaurant. It's kind of a ghastly walk to do that. So I'm being a little critical, but you wanted observation, that's my observation.
No, this is the feedback that I believe they wanted.
Okay.
I'm looking at that concept, that comment. Keeping in mind though too that when you have a big box, the loading dock area for it.
They got it.
So, yeah, so if you've got the apartments closer to then they're sitting on top of the loading dock. So it feels like,
But again, they were trying to screen that with the garages.
with the garages.
And I get it, it's not easy.
Yeah, no, it's hard every
But
day.
that's why they get the big bucks.
So I have a question in that lower proposed land swap corner. So the old movie theater that is now where Greek Street, that just got approved for the micro apartments, that's staying, correct?
Yes.
So it's just they're looking at like parking lot issues with that, perhaps? Is that? Like, I'm trying to figure out what the proposed land swap.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't go over that. So it's about half acre for a half acre swap, and it just reconfigures the space on the north to go to the Cache Valley Market project. And then in exchange for that, Tony Johnson and his partners pick up that area to the west along the old theater.
Okay.
And yeah, no changes to his project or building as far as we know.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any feedback based on those variance requests that are submitted that I went over? The square footage in the parking lot, the signage, the density, any of those?
So my concern anytime you have a variance, it's just like when you raise kids and like one time you say, oh, okay, you can stay up till 10 o'clock at night, and then the next weekend it's like, well, why can't I stay up until 10 o'clock because, et cetera. So if we do that, the next development that comes in,
But it's
how
the
hard
PD.
is it? But I'm saying, like, again, to argue, well, you did it across the street, so even though that's PUD, I'm still a big box, so why can't I have a sign as big as that big box? So that would just be my concern, that, that's, you let her stay up till 10, why won't you let me kind of comment? But the density I don't have an issue with. The parking lot I don't necessarily have a question on, and the 200 East without the commercial on that is a collector road. That to me does not seem to be an unreasonable request to make that all residential.
But I think if we talk about the sign, we don't talk about it as a variance. we talk about it as the signs requested as part of this PD overlay.
Yeah, that's how you have to look at it. It's specifically associated with this PD overlay.
But we have to not ever call it a variance, because if you hear that word, then people believe it's available for other people to use.
But again, we've worked really hard to try and downsize those height requirements on the signs.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
I would
yeah,
prefer
that's
not
a
to
pretty
have.
big change for what we've been doing.
It's a huge change.
The 16-foot sign is almost 2 stories. That's big. I mean, 8 foot plus 8 foot plus 1 foot, that's 17 feet. You know what I'm saying?
So if I stood on your shoulders, it would still be taller than the two of us.
That's because we're both short. I don't have any I talked about the landscape already. I'd rather concentrate it and make something significant about it. I mean, malls in like Arizona, some places, they're not enclosed. You wander and there's walkway, or I mean even gateway. It's a pleasant place to be.
I mean, again, we're redeveloping this place. No one likes interior malls anymore.
No.
But again, the exterior, that feeling of, I think, green space and open space and landscaping is going to be really critical to make this project be a quality project.
With all of my negative comments, I love the project and I want it to happen, but part of the design thing is looking at critical things early instead of later on. The later you wait, the harder it is to change. So welcome, but with these comments.
So you would advocate for a more clustered green space thing?
Not to say we don't do landscaping in the parking lot, but somehow, let's get some kind of.
Enhance the landscaping next to the buildings, the critical.
Maybe the additional
Where
requirement.
people can gather, where people can sit with children as they're waiting for somebody to buy the goods.
And are the signs podium signs or monument signs?
What's your definition of podium?
Podium is like
monument signs.
Yeah, I mean, they're not a pole sign.
Okay.
They sit on the ground like a monument
It's
would,
a monument sign.
but it's just taller.
It's pretty darn tall. If there were wiggle room in that, I would like to see them not quite so tall.
Well, they're requesting, I mean,
I know.
but
I said if there's wiggle room in the,
you don't have to grant the request. I mean,
because once you say well, it's almost 2 stories tall, I was like, oh, wow, that is tall. 16 feet doesn't sound as tall as 2 stories.
I mean, 3 stories without the roof.
Right, I know, but still.
I think this will be helpful feedback for them. They're gonna, make a decision, and they'll know what they're up against when they come back for a formal project review and approval. So,
We'd like a nice project.
Can you tell me can you elaborate? I mean, I was there, but I don't really remember. Did the Planning Commission have any specific feedback that you could share with us?
not too specific. They shared some of the concerns about the green space, the walkability, that kind of sense of place.
Okay.
This is a big enough project site where you could create some meaningful, you could do a 2-acre courtyard there and still have 4 acres for your parking lot landscaping, so I think there's room to operate just because of the mass size of the project site.
And you won't get a chance to do this twice.
right. Well, and I think the Planning Commission was really excited about redeveloping the mall. I mean, again, it's just obsolete,
Well, we are,
Yeah,
but
right.
if we're going to do it, let's try to do as well as we can.
Well, I'm thinking about the comment about, Black Friday, et cetera, and your comment about easy bus access. If Logan City sets up a park and ride to go shopping on Black Friday because people know they can take the bus right up to it and then take the bus right back to a park and ride. that can maybe
They
alleviate some
can
of
go
that pressure.
They can go to Home Depot and the big box, and 8th and Main.
Yeah, but it might-
All on Black Friday, I
Black
never
Friday.
have to walk.
Yeah, but it
I
might
never
help
have to drive.
alleviate some of that, like, oh, we need this massive parking lot for that, 2
Yeah.
weeks out of a year. If, we can do something cooperative. It's like we try to get people to take the bus to Summerfest so that they can not have to park, but, there's ways to maybe alleviate some of those concerns about needing that major parking for when,
Yeah, for 2
for a
weeks.
short period of time. So they can come park on my street.
It'll be on Black Friday and grand opening.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for me?
Nope, I think
that wraps up what I was going to show you. So.
And then the PDU overlay ordinance is going to come to us in end of July, early August.
So best case scenario is the July. Planning Commission's reviewing it Thursday, but they may continue it. I don't know what they're going to do, but that will be how we structure this process. And if we need to make tweaks as far as comments, times, things like that, that's when we need to change those.
Okay, can you pass on our comments about public input to them?
I will.
Thank you.
I will. Are you going to do that?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah.
one of my favorite meetings, along with this
If you
one.
can have a favorite meeting. All right, any other comments for Russ? Okay. Our last workshop is Darren. Hey, Darren! You look so different.
Darren's
Much improved.
Much I met your nephew. I kept saying, I know your dad, and finally he's like, no, you don't know my dad, that's my uncle. But he did say you were the fun uncle, just so you know. So this is ordinance 23-20, a vacation of public utility easements along Crayon Court, which I've never heard of that street.
I haven't either.
In all the time I've lived here, and Southwest Street.
Okay, well, as you said, I'm not Darren, but I'm gonna do my best.
I'm the other Darren.
Yeah, we got a tag team some of
No,
these.
it's Daryl, and Daryl.
I know.
Now we need Darren, and Darren.
So this is for a proposed vacation of public utility easements located, if I can find my mouse, 10th West, 600 South, Woodruff Elementary. This is the Majestic Mountain Meadow
Crayon,
subdivision.
because it's the crayon.
In the very back is
schools.
Crayon Court.
Gotcha, okay.
2 existing subdivisions. On the left of this black line is Majestic Mountain Meadows Phase 2. On the right, or east, is Lynn Dally subdivision. They're both existing previous subdivisions. This, we continue.
But Lynn Valley seems to be a single building.
It mostly is just these 2 lots, that's all it is.
Okay.
Just, yeah. Moving in a little bit, the back side of 95 Crayon Court, there's an existing public utility easement that was recorded there. And then on the back side of 701 Southwest Street, there's a public utility easement here. The owner of this lot has, with the county, done what we refer to as an illegal subdivision, because it was done with the county only and not the city. Created a singular lot that follows this fence line right here without going through the subdivision process of the city.
When did this happen?
Someone sold property to them?
I don't know, a while ago.
So it was a while.
And in full disclosure, the subdivision process with the city, as I understand, happened years ago, was approved, but one of the conditional comments was you have to go through the public utility easement vacation before this can be recorded. They submitted for it. I don't know the full story, but it never happened. So we're trying to clean that up now, called a backlog of work.
So what happens to the lot that they created? That they now have, the county says is there and we don't say it's there?
It just sits there until they come to the city typically and say, we want a building permit to do this. And we say, oh, that's
It's not a legal lot.
a legal lot.
So they've been paying taxes on it though, through the county. The county's assessed it, I'm assuming, as the
I
single
would
lot.
assume so, yes. So then we say, you can't do that until you go through the subdivision process with the city. They go through that. If it's all approved, then they continue with their project.
Okay, but there's only just that little tiny public easement?
It's a double though, right? You said
Yeah,
there's
there's-
two.
Let me go forward. Again, we reoriented.
Yeah.
This is that 95 Crayon Court. There's their public that, again, existed around the perimeter of the entire subdivision.
But
On this one, it existed right there. 10 feet on the either side. A little bit unique. Today, we do 5 feet on either side for a total of 10. When these were done, it was 10 feet.
So where's Herm when we need him? Because there's actually a value to this.
So,
yeah, there is.
some other answer to that. Here's where we are, 95 Crayon Court. Oh, I forgot the number. 701 Southwest Street on this side. This is what we would be vacating to make that whole, if you will, if that were ever needed, as proposed with the subdivision, was a new public utility easement that would get you from here and around the new lot line,
well, we
so if
can't
it were
put,
ever needed.
we can't put it around the lot line if the lot line doesn't exist, according to our rules.
But when the subdivision process happens with the city, they would be required to have this public utility easement.
Oh, so
Two separate processes.
today it doesn't happen. It's not there today, except for the green part net.
Would be added.
The green part would be added today that goes from the cul-de-sac to the end of the red.
Correct.
And the rest of it doesn't happen until they come and say, oh, by the way.
No, the green part would happen with that subdivision process. It would be part of that plat amendment.
So we would vacate our stuff before they do the subdivision? It's the chicken
It's a
and the
little
egg,
chicken
right?
and egg, yes. If they came in with the vacation first, we'd say, well, how are you gonna make up this? Oh, I'm gonna do a subdivision. Okay. If they come in with a subdivision and say you need to vacate the easement, they somewhat typically will happen simultaneously, and we just don't record either one until they're both approved and ready. Again, this one's a little unique in the fact that it happened, I think, about 2 years ago, the subdivision. We didn't record it because one of the conditions was
The
you need to
vacation.
vacate these easements. They, as I understand, came in with the information to start the vacation process, and it never happened. I don't know if that means
But
our
are all
staff never did it.
But are all the
It's
rest-
a COVID failure. I
Sure.
would blame it as a
Due to
COVID
COVID.
failure.
But
Here we are.
are we just vacating this one piece of it? Doesn't it go all the way around the subdivision?
And that's why this green new one that was required would make that continuous now. Like right here, this one will still exist to the north. If a public utility ever had to come and occupy that space, they could come south, hit this green one, and get back right to where they were before through a continuous public utility.
So who's requesting this?
The lot owner.
On the west.
I believe it's the same person owns.
They own both sides. Well, yeah,
With
they're
the
trying,
county, they own the lot.
They're trying to
With
get a
us,
bigger
they own
lot.
2 lots.
No, they own one lot and nothing, because it's not a legal lot.
Sure.
okay. This was a really interesting workshop. Does anyone have any other questions for Darren?
I'm just, yeah, I guess I just.
It is odd, where it's two separate processes and they truly rely on each other. Because we condition one to be done and say you can't complete it till you do this one, but they both have to be done for either one to be.
So they get 20 feet and give up 5.
Square footage wise, my guess is they're dedicating more than we're vacating. If you look at overall square footage, I haven't measured it, but looking at it, they give
I know,
up
but we're giving up 20 right smack in the middle of what they want to do. I mean, you know, when you think about it, it's like you can't.
So Logan Power, I'm just saying, like, so a utility needs access. Does this cost them more now if they have to do something because they have to wrap around? Is there additional cost for the utility if they have to invoke these?
Probably depends on what they're doing. If they're strictly trying to get from this point to this point, yeah, it would be a longer route, but there's no reason for utility to get strictly from there to there.
Okay.
They're typically trying to get from one street to another or from a street to a property.
Okay.
I don't see that as an issue. We have sent letters to all the dry utilities to say, is anybody located here? There's none that we know of.
Okay.
And then also these have to be publicly noticed per the 300 foot within and all that kind of thing. We typically do that between the workshop and the action item.
So if any neighbors have an issue, we'll hear about it.
Correct. So if a utility or a neighbor, someone makes a opposing comment, we will have that for the action item. I was just going to say,
hopefully they're good neighbors, and that won't happen.
A typical reason for this, I can't say exactly what the I don't know what to call them, applicant wants to do, but typically it would be a homeowner that wants to do an addition on their home, so they buy property from a neighbor, so they have proper setbacks and all that, but there was an easement there. Or they want to put a secondary building that would conflict with setbacks, so then they buy property from a neighbor and they need to get rid of those easements because you can't build within those type of thing. That's a typical reason for this happening.
Okay.
There's not a secondary access to this, so we're not creating a new lot.
And there's there are no power lines going around behind those houses, right?
I don't think so, but I can't say for sure where the power lines are. I haven't looked at that.
Okay, because next to my house, there's an easement because there's a power line that goes above, way up.
Oh, in the easement?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know of any utilities are located in that easement.
Okay.
So it'd be dry utilities.
Yeah. So, and it's not the creation of a new lot, it's
expansion.
This one's getting bigger, this one's getting smaller.
All right. Any other questions for Darren number 2?
No. Sorry, that took you longer than you thought.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, Paul. Any other considerations from the council? Teresa, can you give us a quick update? I know we've had some candidates decide to not run for city council. Can you give an update on that?
Yes, 2 have withdrawn. So we've, now it's
9.
9.
And then there were
9 candidates. And as some of you have heard, the governor changed the election dates. So the primary election is now September 5th, and the general election is November 21st. So that adjusted some of the dates of when ballots will go out, and they just pushed everything back a little bit. So that the election will go on, and we'll still have vote.
Well, I realized this is when it's helpful that we have mail-in voting because that's Thanksgiving week. So if that was in-person voting Thanksgiving week, I think that could have a deleterious effect on turnout.
This is the day after Labor Day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well.
So it's
And ballots,
mail-in.
because of that, ballots are usually have to be postmarked the day before, but now they're allowing them to be postmarked at noon on
the
primary
5th?
election day on the 5th.
Okay.
So that's a different thing as well, but it's only for this year, so it's just, they've adjusted it just for that special District 2 election.
Thanks. Anything else?
Not for now.
All right, I'm gonna bang that gavel then and adjourn the meeting of the city council, and now I'm going to adjourn the meeting of the Logan Redevelopment Agency. We have one action item on our agenda tonight.
Should we continue that for some other?
I think that we kind of need to approve this budget.
We can.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, this is
This one is a big one, so.
It just has to be done.
This is Resolution 23-27 RDA. It is consideration of the final redevelopment agency budget for our fiscal year 23-24 in the amount of just a titch over $2 million.
A titch.
Just a titch.
Can I have a titch? Oh, no.
He wants this titch.
I want $183,000.
Didn't work that way,
Doesn't work
sorry.
that way, sorry. Rich, anything you'd like to address with this?
No.
Okay. All right, Kirk, is there anything that you would like to weigh in on the budget request that's been proposed?
No, only here to answer questions.
Okay. Any questions for Kirk before we open the public hearing?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
This is a public hearing, so if anyone would like to speak to the redevelopment agency budget, resolution 23-27 RDA, please come to the podium.
Let's limit it to 3 speakers.
For 3 minutes each.
So we have 3 people left in the room.
Dr. Gail Yost from Logan. I wanted to ask, do you have plans for where this money is already going to go? Because usually you wouldn't ask for a budget at such an odd number unless you had some kind of plans in the offing. And I'm just wondering, what is it going to be doing? What is this money going to be doing? That's not enough to go to the PE overlay, because that's like 200.
Well, that isn't in a redevelopment area,
Yeah.
so it can't get any money anyway.
Okay. So what is it going to do?
So Kurt, why don't you come and,
Yeah, if you
I'm
want.
sorry.
Why don't we
Oops,
see-
I'm sorry,
That's all right, that's all right. I was going to say, why don't we wait and see if there's anybody else that has any questions or comments to this, and then we can have Kurt come up.
Okay, that's fine.
That's
was,
a good question.
But I do have the budget in front of me, so I could actually answer it as well. But any other comments or for this public hearing? All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Kirk, if you want to come and just give a quick and dirty.
Okay, so within the redevelopment agency budget, it's separated into 6 or 7 different project areas. Each of those have their own budget. Some of them, well, all of them have like some general administrative expenses, of course, but the bigger items in the budget, you've got some current development agreement obligations, so past redevelopment projects where the city has a participation in those projects. So there's payments associated with those. We've got the Plaza project going forward, which has some new expenses that are found in this budget. We've got some housing monies that are programmed to be spent for a couple housing programs. The Northern Utah Neighborhood Improvement Program that Neighborhood Housing Solution administers. Then there's the Welcome Home Owner in Logan program, which is in there as well.
Downtown facade is part of that.
Downtown facade program's another component in there. So there's a myriad of expenses, but they've all been incorporated into this budget, which tallies the 2.1 million.
so Kurt, is it true that in some cases, the obligations that have not quite been completed could account for the random odd dollar amounts that she just talked about how it was such $2,130,000? So
That's a good question. Why it's down to the dollar?
Yeah.
That is the reason.
Yeah, there you go.
I figured it was the reason.
Many of the expenditures are rounded, but some are very nailed down to the penny, so, yeah.
Thank you, Kirk.
You're welcome.
I hope that answers your question, Dr. Yost.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Nope. Okay. Do we have a motion for approval?
I will move resolution 23-27 RDA.
Second.
Any further discussion?
just to say that we once again spent a lot of time talking about this in our meetings during May, and all the projects and where they are, in what state they are. It's just, you caught us a little bit off, like I couldn't remember which ones are in the budget. So.
Was it on May 2nd when I was
Yeah, most
my
likely.
anniversary?
All right, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
All right, the resolution passes.
Really?
He said, no, he wasn't opposed. Do we need to clarify that?
Yeah. He's like, really?
Okay.
Oh, I
right.
forgot one more thing. Can I say one thing?
Sure.
But let's be clear, the resolution did
pass.
Correct, okay, just wanted to.
Tom said aye, and I said, are there any nays? And he jokingly said,
No, you asked, is there anybody against this? And I said, no, there's not anybody.
So he'd already
The
voted.
Ellis neighborhood is having a neighborhood meeting on Monday, June 26th at 6 p.m. at the Ellis Elementary School. Should anybody want to attend?
thanks, Jean.
That's it.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.